Okay, just getting started on my last project, making that last piece for the guest room, and I needed a little bit of wood to start out, so I brought around a nice walnut slab and a couple of pieces of ash, got them down in my shop, and I actually need a little bit wider slab than what I have here. It is about 17 inches, and I want it to be a little about 21, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this slab. You can see it wasn't, when I sawed the log, it was too close to the pith. It wasn't centered in there, and you can see how when they dry, they actually get a bow in them when you have it like that. So, I knew this wasn't really a prime slab, so I'm going to cut it up and actually make a smaller slab that has two live edges on it to match the other nightstands that are in that guest room. So I had a Craftsman circular saw that I've had for like 47 years that finally died on me, so I've got nothing to cut the slabs with, so I decided to try my Sawzall, and that I just had one of those big tree pruning blades for cutting wood. All the rest of mine were metal cutting blades, so that really didn't work that good, and it really kind of, you had to go slow so you didn't really tear out the splinters and stuff on it. So I made one cut with that and gave up, and then I finally got out my old Bosch jigsaw and decided to do the rest of the cuts with this. It actually worked pretty good and it cut pretty fast, but I gotta start looking for another circular saw now. So I got the two pieces cut, and there you can see how I'm gonna join them together in the middle, and try to come up with one slab with two nice natural edges with the bark on them there to match the other piece there. So have to cut them down a little bit and try to remove a little bit of the warp pattern to start. So I'm gonna cut the two pieces down to I'm leaving like about an inch to play with when I'm done, but I'm going to cut them down so that they'll match up to be a little bit wider than the final slab that I want to wind up with. So that 18-inch band, so I'll cut this stuff like nothing, make it a real easy job. It just zips right through it. So I got the one, I made sure that I kept them both under 15 inches though, so that they would actually fit through my planer in the end. So I could just take and use my slab flattener for one surface and then flip them over and run them through the planer. So this one here is just I think it's about 14 or 13 inches. So there they are. That's a approximate size that they're gonna be when they're done, and you can see they still have some warpage in there, so I have to build a little fixture next to start flattening them. And there's a couple chunks I cut off. I still have some nice walnut. So I had a sheet of plywood that I grabbed at Home Depot that I started to cut up. I'm going to use this, it's a 1/2 inch, it's like cabinet grade plywood or whatnot. I'm going to use that for the base. And if you see that purple spot when you go in Home Depot, look for pieces of plywood that have that spot on them, and they'll have a little bit of damage on them like that corner there, but you actually wind up getting 75% off of the price of them for that damage. So every time I go in there, I try to find anything I can that's still good that has a purple paint on it like that. So then I had the base cut out there, and there you can see my dust collector. The filter actually has to be taken out and blown again. It builds up excess pressure in there and starts leaking out around the seams when the top filter actually plugs up. So I have to take that out with a compressor and blow that out next warm day. So I got the base cut there, and now I'm just making two rails to run the router sled on. I just have some more ash that came from my backyard, and you can see here the one side that I cut, that first cut was nice and straight, and I could see as I was making the cut, the second side was actually curling off slightly. That must have had a little case hardening in it from when it dried, and I had to go back and put it on the joiner and recut everything. So now I've got the base there, and I'm just flipped it over and clamped everything down to the top of the table saw because that's nice and flat. And I'm starting to just screw those 2 rails onto both sides of the base piece there. So basically this is the start of my router sled here. And then I squared up another scrap block of ash that I had, and now I'm going back and cutting some dados to fit over those rails. And you can see this is one of those times when I didn't turn on the dust collector, and I said, oh, it's just one small cut I've got to make, and actually I wound up making the whole shop be a mess. That's what you get for taking shortcuts. So all I'm doing is I'm putting a little bit oversized groove in here so I can cut it down to fit on those rails, and there it is. You can see I left about 3/16 of an inch oversized there for some felt bumpers. So now I'm just gonna cut that in half. I got 2 9-inch pieces of the track there then when I'm done. And then next I just have to make the sled for the router to ride on. So just going to take another piece of that plywood and just cut it off, and then just go back and cut it to the I think it was 26 inches. I tried to make that sled 24 inches wide, and it stuck over a little bit. So there it is. You can see the good job that a Manna 40-tooth blade does on plywood too. That's an amazing blade. So now I decided to go back and I was going to originally make this on the CNC router, but I just decided to do it by hand to show everybody that I still can do stuff like this by hand, and just had to drill a hole and just take the jigsaw and use that to cut the slot out to clear the router bit. It's a 2-inch bit on the router, and I'm actually cutting a 2.5-inch wide slot there for it to go back and forth in. There it is, and then just a little bit of cleaning up on the spindle sander there. Get all the burrs and stuff off it, and the cockeye cuts that I made off it. So I got that cut out, and then here you can see I've just got some little felt bumpers that I'm putting on the inside of those tracks that I made. These felt bumpers make it a fairly snug fit, but yet they'll make up for any misalignment or anything, so there's no binding down the road. Plus they'll also make it slide pretty easy. So you can see it fits on there really nice with the those felt pieces on there, and doesn't twist or bind or anything. And then I decided to put some I've got some 5,000 stick UHMW tape for sliding stuff on, and I decided to put a piece on the bottom of each of those track pieces there, and in the end it turned out I really didn't need it. I thought I'd be sliding the router the long ways when I did the flattening, but it turned out that I go the other way instead. And then I had to make two guides, 2 pieces of ash for the router to hold the router in place there so it doesn't kick around when that cutter engages. So I got everything lined up so the router was just basically a perfect slide fit in there, and then I flipped it over and drove some screws up from the bottom there. So you can see this is really just a really quick and dirty little fixture for flattening slabs, and it'll let me flatten them for up to about 22 inches wide, I think. So there it is, ready to go. I've got the first slab. I put wood shingles to shim it up, and I actually put some screws and blocks in each end there so it would hold it in place good. And then I picked up this white side spoil board surfacing bit, they call it. I got that on Black Friday for $39. I was looking for a big bit, and it turned out that one, kind of fit exactly what I was looking for, less than half the price of any other bit, and I've really had good luck with white side bits, so I decided to try it. So here it is, just starting the first cuts. I started just going across one way, and then just trying to come back, and you can see that when I come back in this direction, I'm not doing a climb cut. It's kind of pulling you into the workpiece, and it's really the easiest way to cut. You can see when you start going that way that it actually tries to do the climb cut, and you really have to fight it. So I tried going back and forth a couple of times, seeing if I could figure out how to control it. And in the end, I really couldn't, and I just, make a cut from left to right, and then I just go back, and, this one I'm still trying to do the climb cut, but I think the next one I decided to just cut from left to right, and then just slide the router back, and then index it forward. One thing I did find out, if you listen to the router, you can hear it's really bogging down, and it's really working hard with these cuts. What happens is when you run a bit this big, you have to run it down on the lower speed, and the router really doesn't seem to have enough power to really to pull it very fast. You have to go real slow. You can see when you're feeding it, because when you're trying to take off a 1/4 inch of material with this, in some places it really is a good load with a 2-inch diameter bit. So probably it would be best to have like a 3 horsepower router for running this bit, but right now all I have is this Bosch 2 1/4 horsepower, and by going slow I was able to get it done. And the router definitely, as you slow the bit down, it actually seems to lose a little bit of the power that it has. I guess you can hear the speed control really trying to work hard to keep it at the proper speed. But in the end, it did do the job, and it did do it good. You can see it looked like there's some ripples in it, just looking at it with the light across it, but it's really fairly smooth when you run your hand over it. Just a piece of fine sandpaper would knock that right off so you didn't see it, but I guess it's just the way the grain is getting displaced by the router cutter going in different directions or something like that. So in the end, it did wind up taking, I think it took a little bit over 6 minutes, almost 7 minutes to flatten this first slab, so I didn't feel that was too bad. There were some spots where you really don't take much off, and then there's other spots where you're taking 5/16 of an inch off, so that's what you really have to do to get the twist out of it. And the jig actually was really easy to use. I was surprised, and it made it a simple job. And most of the slabs that I do flatten are going to be under 4 feet long, so this will work for now. And there you can see the mess. It was just sawdust all over everything, and I'm just using a almost straight edge that I have just to get an idea of how it came out. And actually, it looks like it came out really just about perfect. But you can see there's sawdust all over, everything completely coated with it. It does make a big mess, so I'm going to have to figure out some kind of dust collection for it. So, a little bit of clean up here, and then I'll be able to pull this first slab out and situate the next one in it. Now you can see there that I've got this whole sled clamped right down to the top of the table, so I figured that's the flattest surface that I have in my shop, so that would help. And it's time to just take out the screws that were holding it in place. And I've got some screws going in and some brackets on both ends there that seem to work pretty good and keep anything from moving or shifting. And some wood shingles under there you can see under the edge. And there's the first side of the first one done. Now the other one's a little bit narrower, and it's going to go a little bit quicker there, but same thing. I'm using those blocks to actually hold it in place, and I put a couple pieces of wood shingle under it first to get everything level so it wouldn't rock, and then I'm just going to start going through and doing the same cuts. Now this one did have I did wind up taking a little bit more to get this one perfectly flat, but you can see I'm just kind of, taking using about 1.5 inches of the cutter and making a cut across there, and then just indexing it back and then just shifting it about another 1.5 inches, making another cut. And this is the actual speed that it goes at, so you can see it really does go pretty quick. But at the same time, it really does make a pretty good mess in the shop. Luckily, I had that sanding table that I made a while back ago. I did a video about making that, and I had that running, so that did catch a lot of it. But this one, this slab only actually took, about 5 minutes to go through and do, and did come out nice, just like the other one did. So this jig really was worth taking a couple of minutes to make it. I wish I had a bigger joiner, but I don't, so this is the only option that I have right now. You can pretty much see from this video that, when you saw and dry your own wood and stuff like that, there's always a chance that by the time it's all dry, it's not going to be perfectly flat. So you always leave it a little bit oversized when you cut it for, the final flattening and finishing. And there you can see that sanding table. I put new filters in that before I started this. You can see they're brown with walnut right now. So it did get most of the dust from this out of the air, luckily. So that's a good thing. I use that all the time for not just for sanding, but also for cleaning up the shop here. So here we are, just making the last couple of cuts on that piece, and there you can see I think I'm cutting about 5/16 off that edge there to get everything flush and flat according to the lowest point on the slab. And just by, going in that one direction so you don't make any climb cuts, it really is a lot easier and a lot less stressful. So there's the second one all done, and you can see another big pile of sawdust all over everything. So now it's time to go over to the planer, and like I said, I made them under the 15 inches wide, so now it's time to go back and make the other side parallel to the side that I just flattened. So you really can't take a lot off at a time with this planer, so you kind of have to go slow and make several passes and run both pieces at the same time. And for these first passes, you always have to make sure that the side that I just flattened with the router is down on the table. And there you can see that one actually had a little more taken off with the router, so it didn't even grab the feed at that time. But I like to still feed them both through at the same time with every pass, because you never know if there's a high spot on them. So this is, a little bit of a slow process, because with this planer you really can only take about 80 thousandths off at a time before things start hanging up and stuff. So I'll just make a couple passes, and you can see they're really starting to flatten up now. And then once I got this down to I think it was about a little bit over 2 1/8 I wound up with, and then I just took another 60 thousandths off the other side where you had those ripple looking marks in it, and that really cleaned everything up. So in the end, originally I started out with 2.5 inch thick slabs, and the final product right now turned out being 2 1/8 inches thick. So that's another reason why you always start cutting oversized. Wood's going to shrink when it dries, and it's also going to twist a little bit. So always better to be safe than sorry. So there they are, the two pieces, all flat and plain and sitting side by side. The next thing I'll be doing is cutting them down to the final size and doing the glue up on them and stuff. But there you can see I've got two really nice pieces of bark on edges on each side, and I started with these couple of pieces of the rough cut wood that weren't exactly what I wanted, and building a simple jig like this to flatten the slab and allow me to get one good side so I could work off of really is a key to having a successful project like this. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.